Sup?
Sup indeed. So you guys couldn't go look at a college? Is that what you're gonna do?
We were going on a college tour, yes,
Okay.
today
For Brendan?
for Brendan. And then actually what was funny is that their rugby coach had texted him and said, hey, I see that you're going to be visiting this weekend. Why don't you bring your cleats? And he's like, all right, cool. That sounds great. And so we've been getting ready, make sure that, it's 12 hours there and back.
Oh,
So it's not
small trip. I get it.
yeah, it's not a short trip. Beautiful drive because it's through the Shenandoah National Park. Drive down. I don't know if you know what Skyline Drive is.
Nope.
Basically, driving through the ridgeline of the Appalachian Mountains through Virginia. Absolutely beautiful drive, especially now with the colors changing and everything else. So, we're getting ready for all of that, making sure everything's good to go. And he gets a text yesterday, and he comes in, and I'm on a call, and he's just like, "Well, forget about Emory and Henry." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, I was wondering the way that he said it. I was just like, did you decide to not go to this school, even though we've been talking to them
I
for a
like how he
while?
says it just to kind of elicit some kind of
Exactly.
some provocation he throws out there. He just like drops a little bomb in the room and
Exactly.
you know,
No, no disclaimers, no
context.
preface, no,
Yeah.
exactly. And then he's just like, yeah, they had a COVID outbreak, and the coach just said that we're gonna have to reschedule. Like, could have led with that, but okay.
Yeah. Don't you love it when people communicate, and by love it I mean hate it, by
And if,
throwing something out there where they clearly could have answered the most obvious question in by putting it out there. Rather they put it out there to elicit some kind of emotional response from you, typically negative, right? Like,
yeah,
what do you mean? And that it's like you could have gotten to the point so much faster. You could have. I see this all the time at work. I see people just inviting you to some meeting with some ambiguous title and no agenda,
yes.
or you get something on your chat that says, "I need to talk to you," or "We need to talk." Right?
Well,
It's like,
funny
why
you
don't
say
you
that
put
because
something else in there that at least gives me context, people?
exactly, it's so I had a friend who Zoom chatted me, and he's just like, hey man, it looks like I'm gonna have to ask for that favor a lot sooner than I thought. Like, uh-oh, what'd I do?
Right.
He's like, oh, FedEx dropped something off at my house, and can you go and pick it up for me?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, but it was like this long drawn out, or it's just like, oh my God, Evan's gone.
Right.
What?
Right.
He was so young. Oh no, he just left. Like, phrasing, phrasing helps.
Jeez, totally. I was at returning some stuff, trying to return some stuff at the home improvement store. And typically the first answer is, usually it's like little stuff, but this was a larger item that I had miscalculated the length of a thing. So I actually needed something even longer, and it was like so complicated because it was part of this larger order and stuff. And then, and immediately it's like, oh, you can't return that here. Nope, 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 nope. Right. And it was like, customer serve what? Like what part of the store is this that I'm in? I'm not in the no department. I'm in the come on, people, help me out.
It's like, didn't I buy it here?
I the reason I bring this up is because like context and communication style and approach, like initial approach, you have to put yourself in the other people's shoes. Like you
Yeah.
can't
Oh yeah.
walk into a conversation like that where you're the only one who knows what's going on and just make such an ambiguous start to it. It's like, no. Like the first question should be like, how can I help you? Right? When you're going
Right.
to do
Right.
this thing. I'm in the customer service department. I'm not in the get out of my store department. Maybe they are. I don't know. It made me
Well,
so angry.
you say that, and so I find myself always over explaining in emails things, because if I just kind of do a short, hey, we need to look at what was a good example the other day. Oh, somebody had left a voicemail, and they're like, oh, we got to really talk about this FF&E spreadsheet because you're showing this, but we're showing that. And so I like shot back. It was like, no, we were just showing an example of what you could do to fit that space out. And this was shell space, but it was a, kind of a quick response to them. And they were like, yeah, so then it kind of, they thought that my response was a little too ambiguous, which it probably was. And so then I went into this long, deep, dive of trying to explain all of this stuff, giving a little bit of back history and stuff. Well, just the opposite of being ambiguous, I explained too much and it confused the living crap out of it. And so it kind of kept going back and forth for about like 45 minutes to an hour in emails. And I was just like, are you available for a quick call?
Can we just have a phone call?
And the way that I explained it to him over the course of 3 minutes versus the 60 minutes that the emails were, he was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying now. It's just like,
okay. Yeah. So I'm going to totally like jam this idea into what I wanted to talk about today. I think it works is like, because of the situation we're in where we're either on one side or the other of a piece of plexiglass from each other, or we're on the other side of a digital connection from each other. And
a digital plexiglass,
yes. LED lit plexiglass. And it's like, there are barriers to communication, 100%, right? And I think, in the physical world with the plexiglass barriers is maybe where this is leading, but it's like there's masks in front of our faces, right? So there's these multiple layers of communication barriers. And if you don't think that's real, like think again, because in typing, nuance doesn't come through. It's very hard to understand if somebody's being cynical or snarky or et cetera. When typically they are, because this is just a comment driven world now online, right? It's like I'm going to go unload in the comments, and you can't tell if it's like really how somebody thinks or if it's just them being snarky and trying to rile something up, because it just doesn't come across in text. And so like you're talking about with these back and forth emails versus a phone call where you get more out of the conversation by hearing tone, by hearing cadence, inflections, like all of that stuff. You can tell if somebody's thinking about it or they know what they're thinking, right? There's definitely a difference there and it happens on this show, right? There's the times when we draw it out because we're thinking while we're speaking. And then there's times when we just know what we think.
Exactly.
And so you totally get that difference so when you're picking the medium, it matters to communicate through. And then when we get out into the real world, and the thing I wanted to talk about was these plexiglass mazes that are everywhere now, right? To keep you safe. And it's like, are we really going to be talking through barriers of plexiglass and face masks forever? Because seriously, like your customer service department acts hostile and you can't hear me and you're not trying to be heard and you're not trying to help me. And the masks and the plexiglass are making that even worse. So even if that wasn't your intention, it comes across this way. So you have to level up. Like that to me is really where I'm going with this, is like through all of these different communication mediums. And often it isn't like, it doesn't come down to communication when you're standing in lines at the bank teller or wherever you might be. You could be at the DMV, you could be going into jury duty. You could be sitting in a restaurant where now we're all on these plastic cubicles separated from each other if you decide to go to a restaurant. It's like you have to level up in so many other ways and not be business as usual because it's not the same. Like the environment has changed. You have to adapt. You have to get better with these new constraints that are in the system. And
I often just use a smile as a way to disarm somebody, to make sure that they understand that I'm either joking, a little bit of sarcasm with a little bit of humor to it,
so
or
do you
whatever.
Just draw one onto the face mask.
And so that has been something that has been very challenging, especially when you're interacting people in the grocery store or whatever, and say no, please go ahead. And when you don't see their face and you don't see, you just really see their eyes, and you don't really know how some people's eyes could be expressive or not.
Right.
And, you're just, people automatically, for some reason now, default to sarcasm and anger rather than, oh, okay, well then I will go ahead. Thank you for letting me go, or moving your
Yeah.
card out of the way, or whatever. And it's just, and so communication, it's interesting, is how do you communicate in this world where you are behind the digital screen? Now we had started off, and I don't know if you guys still do this, we started off with the comfort level of, okay, we will be on the screen with other people, to now nobody turns their camera on and you're just assuming. And so you don't see when somebody wants to like raise their hand and say something, or everybody's talking over everybody else, so you never hear anything, or
I'm giving you the painful laugh because I was on a call earlier this week where some crazy stuff was happening. I was like, I had my camera on, my team had their cameras on, the other people on the call did not. Okay. And it on my team, it's like mandatory. You keep your camera on. You're part of this meeting. Right. I want to see, and of course you can turn it off if you need to, but then you turn it back on when you don't, right? Like, you do this because this is how we interact, right? And I know what you're talking about. You've definitely got some people who just never turn their cameras on, and or maybe they do when a certain person, like the CEO, is in the meeting, but not any other time, right? And so they're capable of turning the camera on. You know that the background's fine, like, and that obviously those conditions aren't always the same, but my point is, I'm in this meeting where some stuff is going on, and I've got this look on my face like, what the F is happening? And a person with their camera off says, Evan, do you need to say something? You look a little distraught, or I can't remember what was said. It doesn't matter. Right. But I'm like, yeah, I do need to say something. And so there it was, right? There was, right. But at the same time, I'm thinking, I can't tell what you're thinking because your camera is off. And I was like, that is not leadership. Like, and this person was a leader in the firm. And so to set the tone by doing the behavior that kind of speaks to the opposite of what we're talking about, it does trickle down. You have to, as a leader of a group, which this person was, and as a leader of my group, which I am, like, I'm setting a tone. And with that camera off, man, it was just like, she called me out on my facial expression, and I could not do the same back. And you know what? Okay, fine. That's how it is. I'm not going to complain about it directly to her, but I'm going to complain about it on this podcast because it does bother me, like that we have these kind of, it's not a level playing field anymore when it comes to that kind of stuff.
So that reminds me of probably one of the last really good, robust meetings that I had in person with our client, and the senior person that we answer to on the client side in our conference room. And we're doing our design presentation, and everybody's like going through and they're talking about opinions and stuff. And I'm sort of sitting on the opposite side of the table from most people, obviously telegraphing my, I don't know, confusion, disgust, whatever it was that I had going, that was just like written all across my face. And she stops everybody and she's like, wait. Cormac has something to say. Yes. I can see it on it. I can see it on his face. And the good thing is that it was basically talking about like how we're treating some columns that both are an interior, then they kind of like pierce through the roof and go through the pedestal of this 15-story building, and then up out and are exposed for a certain portion of it, and then transition back into the building. And it was such this weird, just a very weird way of doing it. It didn't seem like a clean transition. So, specifically talking about design, I tried to bring them back to something that, it was more Corbusian in kind of this like column transition. And everybody was trying to like make their case about why what we were seeing on the screen was the right decision. And then I just said that one, like Corbusian, and then we quickly pulled up an image, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's exactly what we should be doing. And it worked out great for us and for the design, but it was just, those are the opportunities that, having that face-to-face, understanding like voice inflection, understanding the grimaces on somebody's face of like, ooh, kind of thing. Like, because most of the time when we're on a call, nobody will make that sound.
Right.
To know muted. That, exactly. So to see their face will actually let you know that they're making that noise.
So
And that
what about when we get back into the real world? Is everybody going to have a mute button somehow, like so that they can keep those sounds to themselves? Because when you're in a meeting room and those sounds come out, they come out, right? And everybody hears it. Everybody knows,
Yeah,
like when somebody's like, well, whatever, like they're talking under their breath.
Exactly.
Everybody's going to get so used to being able to do that, it's going to totally wreck meetings.
We're gonna have to probably go through a few like test meetings of just like team members and things like that, so that we can make sure that when we get into the real world situation that you aren't on mute. You can't just get up because your screen is off and you hit mute. You can't just get up and walk out and go to the bathroom during some just all of these things that we're now becoming accustomed to of how we are working. It's going to be interesting to see how we transition back into normal functioning society.
It's interesting to me to see the
will
things.
We ever?
Yeah, well, it's a great question. Is there going to be? Yeah, what's it going to be? But I think there's some things that people adapt so quickly to, and then there's other things where they just are being dragged along, kicking and screaming to adapt to.
Yeah.
It's interesting to me. Okay, so I have a final question here. There's something I've been thinking about, and I want to know if you've been thinking about it too. Because if you ever go out of your house where you have to interact with anybody anywhere, kind of riffing off this plexiglass maze idea, all these barriers everywhere, all the signage, all the tape on the ground, all of the
directional arrows.
There's everything. There's so many pieces to this. Okay, so cumulatively, how much money has been spent on all that stuff? I want to know.
That's interesting.
Is there any way to quantify that? Because could we just have solved world hunger instead, right, of putting up all these signs and having like a set of guidelines that were agreed upon that everybody could just follow? And but no, like we live in a society with the craziest amount of visual clutter. And it just got like doubled or tripled. And there's so much money being spent on all this stuff. And every place you go has their own version of it. So, they spent the time to design it and lay it out. Like I said, this home improvement store, I get out of my car in the parking lot and there's this kind of public service announcement being played over this kind of dropped in place security thing. And it sounds super creepy. It's like, please maintain social distancing and cough into your elbow. And it tells you to do all these things. And it sounds like AI is saying it. It doesn't even sound like a human recorded it. But again, like this just kind of all adds up, right? Like there's this visual clutter, there's this audio clutter, there's tape, there's signs, there's plexi, there's brackets, there's screws, there's masks, there's like things on the door, there's like people are now like moving their restaurants out into the parking areas because they have to be outdoors. So they're spending a ton of money. Like this local restaurant spent like $15,000 to put some booths in the parking space. Right. And it's like, how much money did we spend? What else could we have done with all that would have just like solved a huge problem for the world? And the reason I bring that up is because like, if there were I'm putting this in quotes, if there were a climate emergency, what if we just spent all this money on that? Or what if we did spend it on poverty or world hunger or any one of these things? But we're happy to spend it all on signage about keeping your 6 feet. Rant over. Your turn.
Well, I really can't add anything more to that. I could, tell you stories of things that I've seen, but I think you illustrated it pretty well. I mean, the only thing that I could just say to that or add to that is just put your mask on. Would we be so much better off if I see people react very differently now when, say for instance, somebody doesn't follow the arrow in the aisleway at the grocery store and they're going the opposite direction. The shitty looks that people give that person for going the wrong direction, or they're walking towards you, let me turn away so that my face is not pointed towards their face because I know that I will be within 6 feet once they pass me. And all of these things are just the behavioral changes of this stuff. So, not only do we have all of these physical barriers, but now we have all of these behavioral barriers that are being put up, and it's yeah, yeah.